The year is 1981. Somewhere in Los Angeles, a 17-year-old kid named Kevin Mitnick is sitting in his bedroom with a computer, a modem, and a phone line. He's not plotting a heist. He's not trying to get rich. He's not part of some underground criminal network. He's just obsessed with one thing: understanding how phone networks work. And tonight, he's about to become one of the most disruptive hackers in American history, long before cybersecurity even existed. Back then, the world of telecommunications was a carefully guarded empire. Major telecom companies controlled the infrastructure that connected the entire country. Every phone call, every long-distance connection, every dial tone passed through their systems. And these systems were supposed to be impenetrable. After all, they were built by engineers with decades of experience, protected by layers of access controls, and monitored by security teams. The companies spent millions on their infrastructure. They hired the best engineers. They followed strict protocols, or so everyone believed. But Kevin knew something most people didn't. He knew that behind the polished corporate image, behind the reassurances of security and reliability, these systems were built on outdated technology and assumptions that no longer held true. The telecom companies still relied on dial-up backdoors meant for engineers, hidden lines designed to let technicians access the system remotely when something went wrong. These backdoors were supposed to be secret. Only authorized personnel were supposed to know they existed, and they were protected by passwords and internal protocols that should have kept outsiders away. But Kevin had been studying these systems for months, not in school, not in some corporate training program, just on his own, driven by pure curiosity. He spent hours mapping phone networks, testing different numbers, listening to the patterns of tones and signals. He collected technical manuals that were never meant to be public. He talked to other phone enthusiasts who shared bits of information they'd discovered. Slowly, piece by piece, he built a mental map of how the entire system worked. And then he found it. One of those backdoor systems had a flaw so simple, so obvious, that it seemed almost impossible to believe. If you dialed the right number, played the right tone, and hit a specific command, you could bypass the password entirely. No brute force, no sophisticated malware, no need to crack encryption or steal credentials, just a tone and a keystroke. The door was wide open. It had been wide open the entire time. No one had just thought to check. Kevin found that door. From his bedroom, using nothing but a computer and a modem, he slipped into the internal network of America's largest phone company. The feeling must have been surreal. One moment, he was a teenager in Los Angeles. The next, he was inside the beating heart of the nation's telecommunications infrastructure. And once inside, he wasn't just reading files or downloading data, he had access to everything. He could reroute calls. If someone in New York was calling someone in California, Kevin could redirect that call anywhere he wanted. He could disconnect entire regions, flip a switch, and cut off phone service to thousands of people. He could spy on employee lines, listening in on internal conversations between engineers and executives. He could access systems only high-level technicians were supposed to see. Confidential databases, network diagrams, security protocols, internal memos about vulnerabilities the company knew about but hadn't fixed yet. Everything was laid out in front of him like a map. Kevin wasn't stealing money. He wasn't causing chaos for fun. He wasn't trying to sabotage the company or take down the network. He was exploring, testing, learning. To him, this was the ultimate puzzle, a chance to understand how the systems that connected the entire country actually worked. But to the outside world, this looked like an attack, and a serious one. The company's engineers started noticing strange activity. Calls were being redirected for no apparent reason, systems were behaving erratically. Access logs showed someone moving through restricted areas of the network. Someone was inside their system, moving through it like a ghost. They checked their security logs. They reviewed their access controls. They interviewed employees, asking if anyone had shared their passwords or noticed anything suspicious. Nothing made sense. Whoever was doing this had access that shouldn't exist. They were bypassing systems that were supposed to be locked down. They were moving through the network with a level of control that only senior engineers should have. The intruder seemed to know exactly where to go, which systems to access, and how to avoid detection. This wasn't random. This wasn't amateur hour. This was someone who understood the network as well as the people who built it. The company went into crisis mode. Emergency meetings were held, security consultants were brought in, the FBI was contacted. They were convinced they were under attack by a hostile nation or a professional criminal group. A sophisticated operation with resources and training, maybe a foreign intelligence agency trying to map America's telecommunications infrastructure. Maybe an organized crime syndicate planning a massive fraud scheme. Maybe a team of industrial spies working for a competitor. The idea that this could be the work of a single person, let alone a teenager, never even crossed their minds. Meanwhile, Kevin stayed hidden for months. Every time the company tried to trace the signal, he was gone. He had figured out how to hop between payphones, logging in from different locations across Los Angeles, so the signal couldn't be traced back to him. He knew that the moment he logged in from the same place twice, he'd create a pattern. And patterns could be tracked, so he kept moving. Downtown one night, a suburb the next. Always different locations. Always careful to never stay connected for too long. He was methodical, invisible. He knew the moment he made a mistake, the moment he left a trail, it would all be over. So he moved like a shadow, never staying in one place for too long, never logging in from the same location twice. He studied the company's security procedures, learning when they ran traces, when they checked logs, when they rotated their monitoring schedules. He timed his access to avoid their peak security hours. He was always one step ahead. But even the most careful hackers make mistakes. And one night, Kevin got careless. He logged in from home. Maybe he thought he was safe. Maybe he thought the company had stopped looking. Maybe after months of successfully evading detection, he'd grown overconfident. Maybe he was just tired of constantly moving between payphones in the middle of the night. Whatever the reason, that single decision changed everything. The activity triggered a trace. For the first time, the company's security team had a solid lead. The signal wasn't coming from a random payphone this time, it was coming from a residential address. They followed the signal. They contacted the FBI. And at sunrise, federal agents raided Kevin's house. His equipment was seized, his computer, his modem, his notebooks filled with phone numbers and access codes, his handwritten diagrams of network architecture, his collection of technical manuals, everything. Kevin was arrested on the spot, handcuffed in his own bedroom while his parents watched in shock and confusion. The FBI agents didn't know exactly what they had at first. They just knew this kid had been inside systems he had no business accessing. The full scope of what he'd done would take weeks to uncover. When the truth came out, the phone company was stunned. Not a foreign government, not a professional criminal syndicate, not a team of experienced hackers working together. A teenager, a single 17-year-old kid had slipped through a vulnerability their billion-dollar system never protected. The engineers who spent weeks hunting for a foreign adversary or a professional criminal operation had been outsmarted by someone who just wanted to understand how things worked. The revelation sent shockwaves through the telecommunications industry. If a teenager could break into the nation's largest phone company, what did that say about the security of the entire infrastructure? How many other vulnerabilities existed that no one had bothered to check? How many other back doors were sitting wide open, waiting for someone to find them? The questions were uncomfortable. The answers were even worse. Internal audits revealed that the vulnerability Kevin exploited had existed for years. Multiple engineers had raised concerns about it, but those concerns were dismissed as low priority. After all, who would even know to look for these backdoors? Who would have the knowledge and persistence to find them? The company had assumed that security through obscurity was enough. They were wrong. Kevin was convicted on multiple charges: unauthorized access to a computer system, wire fraud, possession of access devices. Because he was a minor at the time of his arrest, the court sentenced him to 3 months in juvenile detention, followed by a year of supervised release. His computers were confiscated. He was banned from using modems and accessing computer networks without supervision. For a kid who lived and breathed technology, it was like being told he couldn't breathe. But the legal consequences didn't end there. This first arrest was just the beginning of a pattern that would follow Kevin for years. After his release, he couldn't stay away. The same curiosity that led him into the phone company's network kept pulling him back into the digital world. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, Kevin continued hacking, breaking into corporate networks, accessing proprietary software, and staying one step ahead of law enforcement. Each time he was caught, the sentences got longer and the restrictions got tighter. In 1988, he was convicted again for breaking into a computer system at Digital Equipment Corporation. This time, the sentence was more severe: 1 year in prison and 3 years of supervised release. But even after serving that sentence, Kevin couldn't stop. In 1992, he became a fugitive, disappearing before he could be arrested on new charges. For the next 2.5 years, Kevin Mitnick was one of the FBI's most wanted cybercriminals, living under fake names, moving from city to city, and continuing to hack while on the run. When the FBI finally caught him again in 1995, the government threw the book at him. He was charged with wire fraud, computer fraud, and illegally intercepting communications. This time, Kevin spent 5 years in federal prison, with 8 months of that in solitary confinement. The prosecutors argued he was so dangerous that even a phone call could allow him to launch missiles or cause financial chaos. It was an exaggeration, but it showed how much fear his skills had generated. And for years after his release in 2000, his name became synonymous with hacking, danger, and exploitation. The media painted him as a digital criminal, a threat to national security, someone who had endangered entire networks. News reports described him as a malicious hacker who had infiltrated critical infrastructure. The legend of Kevin Mitnick grew larger than the reality, but that wasn't the whole story. Kevin wasn't a criminal mastermind. He wasn't trying to destroy anything or hurt anyone. He was someone who was fascinated by technology, who wanted to understand how the systems that everyone depended on actually worked. And in his quest to learn, he exposed something the telecommunications industry and later the tech industry didn't want to admit. Their systems were vulnerable. Their security was outdated. Their confidence was misplaced. They had built empires on the assumption that nobody would look for the cracks. Instead of being remembered as just a criminal, Kevin became a symbol of how exposed early digital infrastructure truly was. A symbol of how companies had built systems without thinking about security. A symbol of how fragile the networks everyone depended on actually were. He proved that the biggest vulnerabilities weren't always the ones that required sophisticated attacks or expensive equipment. Sometimes the biggest vulnerabilities were just oversights, assumptions that were never questioned, doors that were left unlocked because no one thought anyone would look for them. And years later, after serving his time and completing his supervised release in 2003, Kevin did something unexpected. He didn't disappear. He didn't retreat into obscurity. He didn't try to hide from his past. Instead, he stepped forward and transformed his story into something else entirely. He founded Mitnick Security Consulting, a company dedicated to helping businesses protect themselves from the exact kinds of attacks he once performed. He started speaking at conferences, teaching companies how to protect their systems, helping the same kinds of companies he once embarrassed. The teenager who broke into America's largest phone company became one of the most respected voices in the industry he once disrupted. Companies that would have locked their doors at the mention of his name began hiring him to test their security, to find their vulnerabilities before someone else did, to teach their employees about social engineering and the human side of hacking. Kevin understood something most security experts didn't, that the weakest link in any system isn't the technology, it's the people. It's the assumptions they make, it's the doors they forget to lock. This is Dark Trace. Thank you for watching.